Well, let's begin with our panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, on heavy engineering and manufacturing. And the discussion is on building customized solutions to strike a balance between supply and value chain. To moderate the session, we have with us Mr. Sandeep Dandekar, who's the EVP for Procurement and Asset Reconstruction from NetMagic Solutions. Could we have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our moderator for the session? And joining him would be our other speakers. We have with us Mr. Ajitab Kumar, who's the AVP for SCM from JCB India. We have Mr. Animesh Kumar for CMD for PDP Shipping and Projects. We also have with us Mr. Sudeep Rana, Head of Business Customers India from DHL Global Forwarding. Mr. Pramod Sant, Vice President, Head of Export and Import, Export Control and Customs, Siemens India. And we also have with us Mr. Prasyan Mukherjee, who's the President and Head Logistics, Hindalco. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel discussion on building customized solutions, and we have our speakers here. Mr. Dandekar, over to you.
Hi. Am I audible? Is this audible? Is this audible till the end? No? Am I audible to the last person in the hall? Am I audible there? Yes. Okay, thank you. So we know the pitch at which we have to speak.
Yeah.
Right, we are here to talk about specifically supply chain, the emerging landscape, the changing landscape, and the whole dynamics which is ahead of us. We have a panel of stalwarts, one bigger than the other, one more experienced than the other, and I'm fortunate to be amongst them. I will try to break an ice by having a quick fire, maybe a couple of minutes of introduction of each one of them, what they are currently doing in this space and what is their domain as such. May I start with Prasyan?
It's a pleasure to be here, and for supply chain professionals to see the hall completely filled with such people, it's a great feeling. I am currently heading Hindalco's logistics, and I was in Europe heading the supply chain of Novelis, which is a downstream company for Hindalco, and it had its presence in 6 countries in Europe. And from there, I have now come to India, and now I'm heading the logistics space of Hindalco, which, as you all know, is a 1.3 million tons output in terms of aluminium, but the kind of ratios that we have, which we call the multipliers. That means for every ton of aluminium, you need to move 30 tons of other stuff, which is a very peculiar multiplier that we have, out of which 21 tons is the input and 9 tons is the waste. So we move about 45 million tons of stuff all over our country and abroad. So that's the kind of space where I'm currently operating.
Fabulous. Ajitab?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope we can keep enough interest with all of you to keep awake post-lunch session. Lot of skepticism in the pre-lunch session that this session we have to keep the people on the toes with exciting things. Okay. Introducing myself, I am Ajitab. I'm part of JCB team taking care of advanced purchase, which is futuristic, and also in the past I have taken care of supply chain purchasing and logistics functions. I have been all around 25 years in heavy engineering industry, starting the career from Tata, Hitachi, and now with JCB. Heavy engineering, we will definitely go into the depths of that aspect in the time to come, but it comes with its own set of challenges and also own sets of opportunities. And yes, I'm confident that towards the end of this session, we will be definitely deriving some takeaways for all of you over here.
The true heavy lifter. Right, over to you, Sudeep.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sudeep. I'm really glad that I'm sitting here in midst of all you people. I am representing DHL Global Forwarding, and I head the business customers division. And we actually handle all the segments in the industry, starting from automotive till heavy engineering. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Animesh Kumar. I am Director and CEO of PDP Shipping and Projects Limited. We are an international freight forwarder and a total logistics company having a specialization in ODC and project handling. Our core activities include sea towage, sea transportation, analysis and engineering, and ship fastening and lashing. We are a complete sea transportation analysis and engineering solutions company. Myself, I have been a first generation entrepreneur. I have been a visiting faculty to various institutions, and I have been a panelist and a speaker to the various forums. So it's all my pleasure being a part of this interactive session with all of you. Thank you very much.
Great, wonderful. Over to Pramod.
Yeah. My name is Pramod Sant. I work with Siemens. My entire career is in supply chain, procurement, logistics. In fact, Siemens various factories, project division, central procurement or indirect material, and now import export. As you know, Siemens is a multinational where we have different really verticals, and some of the verticals are connected with the heavy engineering also, not only the small electrical or electronics. So we have some good insight about what is happening into a heavy industries supply chain.
Great, thank you so much. So Ajita, do you mind if we start actually questions with you? I would like to ask you, what is your take on the growth which is ahead, the opportunities which are ahead, the scenario of probably the immediate past behind us? How do you see the transition, how smooth it is, how bumpy it is, what are the main levers that you can best use to smoothen this journey from past to future? And do you think any initiatives that currently Indian government is running are very relevant to this domain?
Thanks, Sandeep. Very loaded question. It will also set the tone of this panel discussion for all of you. If I look at heavy engineering industry as such and how it has emerged in India, we can relate it back to something like post-independence scenario, right from 1947 in the 69 plus years. What we have gone through that journey is the early level of Nehruvian model of sustainable internal development, passing through a phase of little dormant, no development, sustenance, and post 1991, a bit of liberalization which kicked off some of the things at a better pace, and it is taking journey at present time. Just to give the perspective, from few $100 million kind of a GDP, today we are at $2 trillion US dollars Indian economy. And that economy, if you look at, and some of the research which are showing that it is at the threshold of explosion. What does it mean? What does it mean for all of us in the engineering fraternity is that this $2 trillion economy in the next 10 years, by 2025, the estimates are it is going to reach to $7 trillion, a 3.5-fold increase. And why it is important that manufacturing within that, which is today sitting at something around 15% of our gross domestic product, will get escalated, and that's the push by the government, coming to your point, is that it will go to targeted to 25%. Now that's the kind of a growth which some of the developed nations have gone through in their journey, and India is embarking on those footsteps. It will bring its own set of challenges, definitely. But along with the sheer mammoth growth from present 15% domain to 25% domain in manufacturing sector, we are also trying to increase our exports in manufacturing products by about 3.5 times or 4 times from the present level. Our share in world trade at this point of time sits very close to about 2%, and we are trying to move in late single-digit numbers of 6 or 7% in the next 10 years. So all this is backed by a huge amount of manufacturing push. And within manufacturing, there are different sectors. And if you look at those sectors which are typically capital goods or heavy engineering, those command a very heavy premium. If India has to grow at the rate of about late single-digit numbers, which government of India is trying to along with the states, something like 8% plus or touching towards the double-digit mark, if that has to happen in the next 10 years kind of a scenario on an average, it will mean that the manufacturing has to be at around 3 to 4% higher than the national GDP growth average. So about 13% is the current estimates about manufacturing. And within manufacturing, the core, which is the heavy industry, which creates the backbone, which creates the total foundation of our economy, that has to prosper at the rate of about 17 to 20%. There will be variations among the industries, but total heavy industry and capital goods as a whole, it will take to about 18% growth on a 10-year horizon cumulative kind of a scenario. Now, the government plans which are backing this, because the government is creating a different set of focus areas for each of the sectors within the heavy industry. It has come to something like electric mobility plan of 2020. It has come to a plan towards the automotive growth. It has come to a plan of renewable energy manufacturing sectors. It has come a different plan for all the capital goods industry sector, which are so-called building equipments for the secondary consumers. So all this is in the plan, and different industries are definitely trying to move ahead towards this journey. However, I would also like to bring to the perspective that this is not easy. There are shifts happening in the industry. We are not alone in this world. With the openness of the government initiatives, something like FDI, we are inviting rich competition from various countries across the world. And those countries will put up a lot of effort in India to come into the similar space and grab a pie of that. There is also a push that of Make it India, which also means that the Indian companies and also the foreign multinational companies, either in isolation or in partnership with the Indian companies, will make products in India. And those products is going to kick a start and give the impetus to the kind of a growth of about 17-18%, which we aspire to become one of the market leaders in heavy engineering industry in the time to come. And I'm looking towards the next 10-year horizon to see that all this is coming true.
Sure, fantastic. And we couldn't have asked for a broader and all-encompassing overview than what you gave. I would request Prasyan to pitch in and probably add any dimension to what Ajitabh said. In addition to that, you have such a fantastic and unique experience up your sleeve of a very specialized kind of logistics handling. So would you like to educate us about what is the sensitivity, what is the importance of being responsive, being a very efficient supply chain organization as such, and what benefit it can impart to the whole business process?
So first, let me take a cue from what has just been said about the GDP and the linkage to the heavy engineering industry. I think I fully agree with Dr. Rajan when he said that growth for India is a no-brainer. Frankly speaking, with the kind of demography that India has, growth is really a no-brainer. Growth will happen. In fact, we are putting all the obstacles possible for growth to happen in India. My feeling is that with logistics cost at 18%, which is, I think, globally, we are absolutely one single example of a country where the logistics cost can be so high. And you recently, in fact, very recently, Gadkari ji had unveiled the Road Economics of India, which is a joint study between IIM Calcutta and TCI. And when I went through that report, I found that the meterage, or what they call the sort of fuel efficiency of the average of road in India, guess what it is? It is 4. It is 4 kilometers per liter. Now, if that is the average, and mind it, the most inefficient haulage is the long distance haulage. And why is that so? It's because that particular haulage of 500 kilometers and more needs 31 stops on an average. Some of these stops needed goes to about 60. And it is all because of people on the highways and different sort of toll centers and other stuff which is happening. So this is one part of the story. On railways, yes, I think we have a ministry now, we have a minister now who is so proactive. He meets us every year. In fact, yesterday was his customer meet day. And he is now putting up new sort of customer relations managers in railways to deal with the key accounts. So I think we are moving absolutely right in that direction. And I believe, as Say's law said, that supply finds its own demand. In India, the problem is an efficient supply. And I go to your second point, which you want me to talk on, which is efficient supply chains. My experience in Europe has been that unless your supply chain is efficient, you can never be responsive. And they are not dealing with commodities. They are dealing with actual products. But India, we have commodities, and we are sort of moving towards final products. So let me tell you and give you a brief sort of some examples from the European Union. So in Europe, if you see the waterways, in fact, the earlier session was talking about waterways. So the Rhine-Danube system of Europe is the most efficient system. And as you know, in any supply chain, you have to create one part of the chain which has got to be very efficient. And that part of the chain in Europe, let me tell you, is not rail, it is not road, it is this Rhine-Danube system. So you have Rotterdam as a port where which is sort of every ship is practically getting into Rotterdam. And through the Rhine-Danube system, you are sending that material through barges. And I was moving quite some stuff over there, and I can tell you that I had to never, ever follow up where that barge is, because the journey was as smooth as ever, and all that you had to do was find out what was the level of water in the River Rhine. Because if the level of water was slightly more or slightly less, so there was some problem. But otherwise, every barge was on time. So it's a lesson that I take from there, is that if your one leg of the supply chain is very efficient, and you have to build that part of the chain very, very efficiently, and then you create the hub and spoke model. The Europeans, and my learning from also for the Americans also, is that they are very, very proactive in designing a supply chain in such a manner that you put the sort of plants and customer centers and hubs and spokes in such a manner that ultimately what you actually want to achieve, what is your final objective, is already made up in that diagram. So in Europe, for example, we had a hub and we had spokes all over Europe in all those different countries, across, I think, 13 countries. So I take that example, that the hub and spoke model with a very, very efficient part of the chain, if you can build. And then you start building on that block. So one part of the chain will be efficient, and then you start to build that in terms of other areas. And it is going to come up in a very big way in India, because ultimately the chain, how efficient it is got to be what the customer is going to think about it. So customer centricity has to be the major objective in designing your chain. So what we do in India is that similarly, we try to work with railways. We try to work with our service providers. We try to work with our shipping lines to see that we create this sort of an infrastructure. And I take it from, I'm very bookish that way, that I take these examples from the 1980s when Michael Porter, in his Competitive Advantage, that book, he drew the diagram of the value chain, and he put inbound logistics, outbound logistics, and infrastructure. How many of us really think about infrastructure when we start our plants? Infrastructure for that plant to be able to handle logistics. Infrastructure at the right places. For example, we operate through ports, and we have to work with our partners to see that we continuously develop that infrastructure. It is not going to be only one part of the chain which is going to sort of decide how good you are, how responsive you are. It has got to be many other small building blocks which have to be added. And it has got to be partnered with the service provider, partnered with the shipping lines, partnered with railways, and all the others with whom you are working. So to sort of summarize, I think responsiveness or customer centricity, I think in the earlier sessions, a lot of people talked about Net Promoter Scorecards to be able to deliver on time. It is a really piece by piece building blocks, starting with infrastructure, creating an inbound supply chain which is efficient, creating an outbound supply chain which is efficient, creating the hub and spoke model, and then building and improving each and every link in that chain. And my global experience tells me that India as a whole, we do not have the eye for logistics. We don't even see the logistics cost. It is like a tip of the iceberg. But ultimately, when you start to pen down all the costs that get involved in it, you find, my God, it is anywhere between 18 to 20%. That's the kind of cost we are. And unless we bring it down, whether we are in aluminum or whether we are in steel, we will never be competitive, because the other guys who are in the lowest end of the cost curve, you see them, the logistics cost is never going to be more than 8%. And they really work very hard to achieve that. So when you build your supply chain, you build your competitiveness, I think you've got to see that you're operating in terms of logistics cost in the lowest end. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. That's my sort of summary.
Superb. How wonderfully you can simplify complicated things to understand. I must commend you for that. My next question will be to Pramod, who has a wonderful portfolio under him, and he's imparting some terrific benefits to his frontline business. I would ask you, how do you see the whole scenario of change in this domain? What has changed in the recent past? What do you see changing in the imminent future? And how do you make sure that you, your function, your team members remain fit, agile enough, lean enough to handle this as you go forward?
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. So when I look at change, I come to a term called VUCA: volatility, complexity, uncertainty, and ambiguity. And look at today's news that Britain is coming out of European Union. I mean, we would have not imagined. This is a volatility, the changes. We would have never thought that oil prices will go such a down. So what is change? Change is going to happen, but the speed of change is very fast. It's so volatile that we are not able to imagine. If you have seen the changes globally, tremendous, no doubt they are happening with various areas. Or market opening, people are looking at, yes, you read in news that India will be part of missile technology. We are on the verge of getting part of nuclear group. What is that going to happen? That is going to open a new completely market which was never available to us, and where we have cost advantage. So changes globally are happening too fast. Good, some changes are good for India, some changes will really affect India. Similarly, what is happening within the country for changes? I look at the government advertise, and out of that, what is really happening? If you look at some of the departments which are related with supply chain, road ministry, transport, Mr. Gadkari is quite example that he is pushing so many things which will help us. Railway, another very keen, and what we say that in India, the logistic pyramid is completely reversed. When you go to Europe, you have the material going by the coastal shipping, saying higher, followed by rail, and lowest by the road. In India, maximum goes by road, negligible in coastal or very limited, and in between somewhere railway. So why our costs are higher is, the reason is that our pyramid is completely opposite.
Absolutely.
And the changes, what is happening in India, they are in right direction. You see railway minister talking about really the cargo movement, the Gadkari trying to have road infrastructure. At the same time, the changes which are happening on government or ease of doing business, even though we think that it could be a fancy word or government is propagating, but if anybody goes through last 6 months, the notification which customs has released to make the things improving. Intentions are good, implementation will follow. It may happen in all, but it may have not happened. But the intentions are good and efforts are in that direction. I was a part of one of the study, World Bank gives this ranking of ease of doing business.
Right.
And the trading across border, our rank is 133 or 134 like that. And we were always wondering how it is. So time taken for import, time taken for export, cost for import, cost for exports. These are the 4 broad parameters for that. Sure. Then I found very interesting that the revenue ministry put up people, they came to educate various trade people how this score is coming. And to our surprise, the people who are answering this question have got no clue what is asked. And that's why your score is wrong or your averages are wrong. On somewhere we are doing better, but our ranks globally is different. If you take the trading across border, what documents are required as per compliance, people don't know.
Right.
If you are going for a shipping payment and that receipt is required, it is not a compliance document, it is a different part. But people mix it and your scores are different. So I was really happy that government is taking initiatives across various forums, explaining them how to improve our ranking, and these are the right way questions can be answered, and this is what we are doing. So the changes are happening in India. Changes are happening on customer front. Definitely we know the projects. Of course, and some places because of some issues the project gets delayed, which is happening. The globalization, particularly for heavy industry, it is also a very interesting parameter. That's something which was made in Europe. We have a very good example that we were having one transformer factory in Scotland. It became unviable to move the cargo from that place, and it was moved to India. So that centers are moving from the main thing to the different countries. So globalization, so with that you have a different customer base. Maybe from Europe they were not focusing on Southeast Asia, but now from India they are focusing on Southeast Asia customer. Supplier base is changing from Europe to this part. So all these changes are opening lot much things for an Indian or a global business. Right. Globalization, outsourcing, and the customer demand. In that part, another part of change, which you said that whether it is helping us or not, definitely all these changes are helping us. As we see the efficiency and productivity, as you talked about, these words were not there. We were happy that we get a material. As a supply chain, first our objective is that I get a material, I'm happy. Then you think of time, cost, everything. So this is completely changed. Now what you want is on time with maximum efficiency at the really the right cost or a global in same way. So this mindset of people are changing. Customers are becoming more and more demanding, which is also really a good change because customer demand. Every organization makes efforts that how I can do better for customer, and then there is overall improvement. Somebody implements some good part, others have to follow. Then they think in some other way that how I can meet customer demand. So these changes are bringing the entire our level on a very high side, which is helping them. One very critical thing which is changing is importance is that it is we are now looking at environment, health and safety, which is a very important thing. Otherwise, if you look at in India, this is an area where we always neglect.
Yes.
I will give you one example of environment. We were moving one transformer of 200 tons. So it was moved from port, it was on site. And from site, it was to be put to foundation. And we had an engineer who is supposed to be a logistic engineer to supervise that. And he came on second day, he gave a stop order. He said, I cannot allow, you are not following things, please stop the work. So I sent my one person, phoned up, it didn't work. I phoned his boss in Germany, please, he is not understanding Indian conditions. We have moved hundreds of transformer. Now I'm shifting 20 feet. Why he is not allowing? His boss said, yeah, okay, you please see them. He's new, but you go and help him. Finally, I went to site, and this German engineer was coolly sitting, and he told me, Mr. Sen, good, you come. I will show you some slides. He showed one slide. One truck was coming. There was some material kept. He said, when this truck came, I was thinking that it is scrap material. Then I found these are the equipment to move the transformer. Then another slide was that heap of the equipment was kept down. He said, look at this heap. I requested them, now you are downloading, put it in the right way that we can get it. People don't understand. Then, very typical example that whenever we put some wiring connection, generally there is no pin on site. Yes. You put wire directly into the something. He said, so risky. Then there were hydraulic jack. So one of the jack was having liquid going into floor. He said, this is the environment loss. Once oil goes into earth, this is gone. And you are not bothered about environment. I said, then he gave a number of examples. Then we have to shift equipment back, get a new tested, right one, hydraulic jack replace, everything we did. And this thing. Then comes to behavioral part. He said, Mr. San, my job is to come here. Your job is also come and install this transformer. I come at 8 o'clock. Your people start coming out only at 8:30. Supervisor will come at 9:30. And first 1 hour is only discussion, ki what is to be done today. We know this power plant is to come 2 years back, 6 months back we signed. We have a complete methodology signed. How to move this? What are you discussing every day morning for 1 hour? I don't understand. So I think these changes will bring a lot of difference to our people.
Right.
The one most important is skill set. We may have good skill set, but some skill set are global to understand the changes and what is required. I think all these changes are going to benefit us.
Sure.
And it will make us more competitive, more productive, efficiency is more, cost will go down, and I'm quite hopeful on the situation.
Sure. Well said. How well said. While you were speaking and giving your perspective, I was just thinking, when we say that the rate of change is increasing and there is a change within change, the change itself is changing. In physics, we have a concept, we have a ladder of concepts. You first have displacement, then you have speed, then you have velocity, and at the apex you have acceleration. There is nothing more than acceleration, but today we have rate of change of acceleration actually. So we need to probably rewrite physics. It is that kind of change, it at times becomes like violent that we have to live with, and that's a part of life. So very well said. Now, I always reflect about supply chain and probably how we can modernize our own thinking about supply chain. Most often, very valid point that you made, we often think about physical logistics onwards, forwards from, let's say, factory to site or a vendor to a manufacturer, and it's only the goods. But I always think that an efficient supply chain is 4 stream. One is the goods or the services, the information, the documents, and the funds.
Exactly.
And until all 4 start flowing like a well-oiled wheel, the supply chain is always going to be cracky, bumpy.
Exactly.
So I think technology will definitely come big way to help us synergize these 4 sub-wheels.
Exactly.
So my question to Animesh, who brings a very different flavor to the table, how do you see in shipping industry technology playing a pivotal role in changing lives?
See, how much, how much the technology plays the role, it's a relevant question. Because when I just compare it with the heavy engineering transportation, even the word heavy is a relative word. What is heavy for one may not be heavy for the other one. Like in India, we consider 50-ton weight as a heavy lift. But many countries, the developed countries like Korea, South Korea, China, they have the technology, they have the infrastructure, they have the equipment. And that's why for them, what is for which we have to take much efforts in order to make the things move, for them it comes automatically.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is an amazing statement you made. It is very powerful. You said heavy is relative,
Yes.
and what is heavy for me is not heavy for you.
Yes.
So it has a lot of meaning in itself. So fantastic perspective, Raj.
So what I was trying to explain, instead of going into the intricacies of the, the term and the, because I being a project logistics and handling company, so I will take some of the cases that will better define the prospects in which we are discussing the things for the heavy engineering transportation.
Sure.
In India, we have our infrastructure is limited and we are trying to make the way out. What we consider 50-ton as heavy is not heavy for the other competing nations. Now, I just, one of the examples where we were bringing ship engines and delivering it to the various shipyards. So these were generally 100-ton each. So we used to pick it up from the origin and deliver it to the destination, various shipyards in India. So at one point of time, we were having a discussion, and then we were just having a discussion, and I had been a visiting faculty to the institution, so they were one of the engineering giants. So they just thought of that we are planning to bring in 300-ton single weight or 350-ton single weight. But the problem is we do not have an infrastructure. There is no crane in the vicinity, and somehow there is another problem related to that. This particular cable is for the offshore, for the MHSRP2 project, and this has come early. if we keep it at the origin, the demurrage cost is very, very high.
Right.
And if we bring it in India, then we have to store it onto the barge. Storing onto the barge, it's a huge cost factor, and that also where the, the project has got deferred for as many as 6 months. So we told them, we chalked out a plan. We applied the science, and we thought of the limitations, and we thought how we are going to do it. So we worked out a methodology, a method statement, where how this consignment can be handled without usage of crane, because there is no crane in the vicinity. And once we store it, how we can shift it to the destination. So, the team of engineers, I am having the science background, and I am having a good flair of knowledge in law, and more important is the prudence. That
This
is
sounds
applicable.
like a discovery session.
No,
Discovery
it's
channel.
not discovery, because what you asked me, it's a very interesting thing. I'm just citing one example that will give you the, what I want to say. So finally, we brought the consignment. This was single weight of 375 ton.
Wow.
And we delivered it at Mumbai port. That was the heaviest ever by that time. And in order to load it onto the barge so that it goes to the offshore, we did the floating RORO loadout operation.
What did you do?
Floating RORO loadout operation.
Right.
This operation is like it is walking onto the water surface.
Yes.
So a dumb barge is put onto the, in the sea
Using
at
the
jetty,
buoyancy,
along
yeah.
the jetty.
Right. Yeah.
The depth of the
Yeah.
water is 10 to 12 meter, and then the cargo laden onto the truck is put onto the barge, rolled onto the barge. So the moment, altogether the weight was some 550 ton with the truck weight and all.
Wow.
So when we were doing this operation, we planned this operation, then we thought of approaching the port in advance. So somehow somebody suggested that better the consignment should come, then we approach and we make the way out, because we know how to do it and how we are going to do it. So we convinced them, everywhere there was a problem. The port is asking, what happens if the jetty will wither away? Our jetty is very, very old. So we have to tell that how we are putting the weight 5 ton
Right.
per square meter, and even below that. Then,
Okay.
when we are putting onto the barge, we have to do the blast calculations. We have to scientifically do the calculations, like the barge can take the weight, all the equipments can take the weight, and do these kind of applications. I'm telling you, in our heavy engineering transportation, even the word technology, it's related to innovation. And most of the time when the consignment is stuck, if it happens to be an export consignment, the innovation is related to the consignment of national importance. Because it's export, it's of national importance, so somebody will come with different idea, and then the innovation starts playing. Why is the innovation? The innovation is because we lack the technology. So in one of
Because
the
we lack the technology.
we lack the infrastructure.
Right.
We have we have less infrastructure, so we need to be innovative.
Right. Yeah.
Like in one, I just lost that rhythm. So I come to another
If I may,
another case where we have some of the infrastructures available which can handle.
Are you able to hear him? Probably you need to be a little louder, I guess. Are you
I
able
need
to
to be
hear
a
him?
little louder?
All of you? Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's all right.
Okay.
It is very strange that in our country, some of the infrastructure are available, and still we are unable to use it for the heavy engineering transportation, because these are belonging to some export-oriented unit, these are belonging to some shipyard. For that, if at all we want to use those infrastructure which can handle up to 1,000 ton, we need to take the special permission. Taking the permission is so difficult.
Right.
It's like, it's like joining many loose ends. And some of the freight forwarders who have applied the innovation in order to take advantage of the infrastructure and technology we are having, they have paid very heavily, because at the 11th hour, the authorities, they do not budge. I will tell you one or two more examples, like, how difficult it is and how we are making the way out. But prior to that, I just take one more example. I visited one of the premium, engineering institution, a government organization. And we told that, see, we have been handling 350-ton consignment. We have handled repeated consignments like that and operations. So please enroll us as a vendor. We want to participate. So the gentleman there, he gave me a list. And he told me this is the list for becoming a vendor. So they have different criteria for becoming the vendor. What is this criteria? If you own 10 XLs, you can handle 50 ton. If you own 50 XLs, you can handle 350 ton. If you own n number of XLs, you can. I asked him that, you are a sensible person, you give me work, you do not give me, that is different. But I, being a sensible person, let me ask you a question, if you allow me. Yes. I told him that we are already having very good number of XLs in the country. And most of the XLs are lying idle and there is no work.
Right.
Yeah.
And these XLs are mostly imported products. So why you want us to import XLs in order to become vendor in your organization, and you are the premium government organization?
So we have so many examples of misfired logic and disoriented kind of diktat.
So I conclude within 2 minutes. So what he was telling that, see, these rules and regulations are almost 40 years old. I am a humble employee. I cannot change the rules. If at all you want to change the rule, you have to move somewhere else. So at the end, he told me, we know what you are talking is okay, but we cannot, build the cat.
Yeah. So it's a red tape that comes.
But somebody has to build the cat.
Correct.
Who will build the cat? That is
But
important.
fortunately for us, this scenario of red tape and hard nut kind of attitude is changing, and that is what
Yeah, but
is
it
the
is
encouraging.
required, because what we are talking of startups. We are talking of Make in India.
So
where
it's
the
nice to
startups
see
have to,
that such an inertia that existed for such a very long time
yes,
is changing, and all of us
yes,
kind of are agreeing,
Yes.
which is a very healthy sign.
yes.
So Sudeep,
Yeah,
had
just
something-
taking a cue from him on technology. And I heard from my panelists out here that in supply chain, information is the key, isn't it? And we at DHL, what we do is we innovate. So the information follows you. So be it apps, be it websites, it actually follows you. So what happens is when you give a consignment, which is so important for you, and I will take his example which he gave about Michael Porter model. And that what it says is supply chain is important because everything is fixed there, you have vendors aligned. But value chain is what matters to basically make your product stand out. Is a company able to actually help you in creating that value? So that is where DHL, a company like DHL comes in, and it adds value there. So we innovate products. We give you products which is the call of the supply chain. Like if you want overnight deliveries, we have a product for overnight deliveries even for this space here.
Right.
And then coming to FTWZ, they spoke about demurrages. So we came up with this concept of FTWZ in India, and we established 2 FTWZs in India as of now, in Chennai and Mumbai. So what we do is we give you an option of importing it, do not pay the duties. You can do the packaging there, relabeling there.
The value adds.
Exactly, the value adds, and then you can, whenever it is required, you can actually clear that consignment.
Yeah.
So these are the things, these are the innovations we are building around this industry, so that at the end of the day, your customer, the end customer, becomes really happy.
Right.
So that's our endeavor.
So you add competitiveness, you add
Yeah.
nimbleness, you add fitness to
Exactly.
the whole supply chain of your
Yeah.
customers.
So that is what they're looking at. At the end of the day, what the customer is looking at is what he gets out of a service provider, isn't it?
Sure. I would request both of you to maybe give you a flavor or perspective on how do you believe that your domain, your function is a key lever of your organization to outperform your competition in the front end.
Should I? Yeah. Look at the typical, I will not put only my company's perspective, but general heavy engineering perspective, what is in India.
Having said that, Ajitab, of course you have all the liberty to give your perspective the way you feel right, but I specifically want this point to be added because time has come for all of us to understand that we are not here to do doctorate in supply chain anymore.
Yeah.
We are not here to be in an isolated silo, be a fantastic supply chain department and be happy with it. We ultimately are here to increase the efficiency of our front-end business. That's ultimately the proof of pudding.
Yeah.
So how do you make that differentiator come into the game?
Sandeep, absolutely right said. Here comes the concept rather than supply chain, value chain. In a supply chain, if you have a series of say 10 points from the point of origin to the point of consumption, you look primarily from the manufacturer's perspective that okay, my tier 3 supplier will give material to tier 2, tier 2 will give to tier 1 will give to OEM, I will give to my dealers, distributors, and finally at certain point of time, it goes to a customer who is the actual consumption. It may be any kind of engineering product. But when I look the same chain from a different angle, see from the eyes of the customers, who is going to use that? In this entire, the material has flown, material has got transformed, material has got added, deleted, changed its shape, size, perspective, color, and various properties. And when it reaches to the customer, it gives certain work. And when you slice it down, each of the value add or each of the journey, which from say third tier supplier, which is something like a plate or a bar or something like a raw manufacturing plant, it comes to a processing unit, then a part manufacturing happens, then a sub-assembly or something like happens at tier 1, and then it comes to say OEM. We cannot afford now, and that's the change which we are trying to bring, is that we cannot afford to look only at the one level below. You have to look entirely through the backward chain, which is how best I'm using the raw material. How is the conversion happening at my tier 1 or backward tier 3 supplier, then the tier 2 supplier, and then a tier 1 supplier. Are there losses getting built in that process? Are we building inefficiencies in the form of either material lying unused for 6 months, that's loss of money for the nation. If it is taking too much of transportation zigzag, that's also a loss of resources and money. So that entire value chain needs to be streamlined. And hence, from the point of the OEM looking forwards also, are we building lot of unnecessary stocks? Are we building tier 1 dealership, tier 2 dealership, and then finally it reaches to customer. So this is from the angle of the value chain which need to be analyzed for each and every organization. There cannot be one size fits all kind of approach. Within our engineering industry, an electrical machinery company will do something differently, a construction equipment will do something differently, a truck manufacturing company will do something different, or maybe a company who does some kind of a cement manufacturing plant or some kind of a turnkey projects, they will look at differently. Now, again, second perspective is building up the cost. Cost is relevant to time and also relevant to inputs. So in some form, we need to understand that sometimes there can be an offset of time for getting a better cost. Or at some times, if more you keep on the time horizon, the cost just added naturally.
Sure.
So a balancing has to happen between a supply chain and the value chain to arrive the best solution for the customer. Because finally what we are trying to do, it is for the customer.
Sure, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
well said.
Okay, so I'll take this question forward with my experience in Europe. And we've talked about supply quite a bit. Let me shift our focus to demand. And in a supply chain, if we are not able to manage demand, then I think we will never be able to manage our supply. At the end of the day, every demand has to be met with a supply. And this has to happen at every stocking point. So my European experience says, and I think it is going to happen in India, it's going to happen faster than we think, that there are going to be situations where you are going to work with customer and you are going to be the only supplier. I mean, it's very common in Europe.
Yes.
For example, we were supplying to BMW the hoods, bumpers, inner doors, outer doors, we are the only supplier.
Right.
Or Jaguar Land Rover, for example. So how does the customer work out its production runs completely aligned with the production runs that we are having in our units. And if there is any mismatch, then the penalties are rather heavy. For example, the Munich line of BMW, which is one single line producing all the cars, different models, and there are going to be 700 variations. If that line stops, there's going to be a 10 million euro fine on you, so you better be careful. So how do you match these two together? Now, this is a heavy engineering example, but we had other people talking about e-commerce and all that. That will become even more complex. It becomes even more complex when you look at fashion retail, for example, where you're not going to replace the item which got sold today. So it is not with replacement. So things are going to be rather difficult unless we have proper systems in place to be able to manage the demand, or I should call it shape the demand. Shape the demand in such a manner that your supply is able to meet that efficiently. I think this is an area where a lot of value can come in. And maybe if I have time later on, I can talk about other small examples.
Sure, fantastic. I hope we have more time because I'm sure we are going to run short of time, looking at the kind of experiences that all of you have. Can we have a quick round of exchange? Yes. Any questions to any one of specifics or generally to panel? Is the question to anyone in specific or?
I would like to ask this to Mr. Mukherjee.
Okay.
Yeah. Particularly to Mr. Mukherjee, and I think there's one gentleman from DHL here.
Yeah.
Right. So, means any one of you can take this question. Basically, there's one thing that's been disturbing me since morning. I've been hearing this number of 18% supply chain cost. We are a logistics company. So I'll just give you some numbers, and I've been just trying to understand where this 18% is coming from. So let's say you want to hire a truck from Delhi to Bombay. I hope all of you must be doing this in your regular, be it your aluminum manufacturer or be it anybody who is a logistics company. You get a truck in India for about 50,000 rupees, 16 metric ton truck. That comes to about 3 rupees a kg. Let's say Mr. Mukherjee wants to transport aluminum, costing 100 rupees a kg. It will be 3% of the cost. There will be some warehousing cost, there will be some other cost, but the trucking cost is 3 rupees. Trucking is one of the most expensive way to transport bulk materials. So if I go to railways, it will be even cheaper. If I go to shipping or coastal, it will be even cheaper.
You can stop here because I'll tell you exactly how that 80% comes. 1 ton of aluminium needs 30 tons of material to be moved. You gave me that 3% example only on the outbound. What about the 30 tons which will be coming in as inbound?
Yes.
So don't look at it on a piecemeal basis. You'll be rather obscured by the data. I'm talking of the actual data. Take this glass of water over here. Do you know what is the logistics cost of this water? It will be much more than 18% of the cost, much more. You pick up any item in this room and I'll give you the exact cost of that item. To move that material from the input and output, you add all that up and you will come to that exact number.
It's again coming to the point that we did not see only from the manufacturing unit to the end customer point. You have to see the complete value chain. Yes. If you add up the bits of the costs and the lost opportunities in each of the value chain, the cost of money, the cost of material and transportation, etc., leaving aside the final goods, then the figures are quite mammoth.
Okay. My second question is, with reference to the comparison between India and Europe, like a lot of.
If anyone else has a question, we'll go in a fair opportunity. In case nobody has, then you can go ahead with your second question. Does anyone else want to ask a question? No, so you're fortunate. You can ask
okay. My second question is, when we are comparing India and Europe, now I wanted to ship one pallet load of material from 100 kilometers away from the Antwerp port to Antwerp port, and I was given a costing of rupees 50,000 in that point in time. And the same thing, when we look at, when I asked the gentleman why it is 50,000 to ship just one pallet, 1 ton of material from 100 kilometers away from the port till port, whereas the same pallet will come right up to my Delhi warehouse. From Antwerp port, it will come in 50,000 rupees. So the gentleman gave me the answer that the driver cost in Europe is like 1,000 euros we have to pay to the driver for working 9 hours. In India, we pay something like 25 to 30,000 rupees for working the whole month. So when we are comparing this cost, when we say India is 18%, I'm not getting this 18% again because the position is in Europe, your trucking costs are far higher than in India.
I'll explain to you why it is 8% in Europe. You can pick up any website of European commerce ministries of different countries and you will find that number coming to 8%. Don't look at driver salaries. You cannot imagine that driver in 2.5 days will be covering the entire Europe. If you pick up an item in UK and want to ship it out to Poland, you will reach that through using the English channel, of course, and then trucking it across within 40 hours. Now, that truck moves through a completely borderless continent. That truck never stops. So it will, and of course, the driver has to get the sleep and all that. Everybody is monitoring that. You cannot do all that. So he will never drive beyond 8 hours in a day, of course. And he will still ensure to place that in 40 hours. What is this, all this leading you to? It is leading you to a very, very efficient system. If you look at the tonnage that that driver moves in a month, I can write it right now that he is going to move at least 20 times the tonnage that the Indian driver has moved. And the number of turnarounds he's making on that truck is unbelievable. He is not going to sit idle. When he's moving a material from Rotterdam to any other place, let's say you pick up any place in Europe, his return load is already fixed up. And you know how they are achieving this? They're achieving this through a concept called horizontal collaboration. A competitor of a company can collaborate on logistics. If you see the current rulings of the antitrust sort of rulings, you will find that for logistics reasons, they will allow two of the competitors to collaborate with each other to see that they are utilizing the lanes properly. They're utilizing the lanes in such a manner that the return loads are not empty. Of course, the return loads are still there. That gets published. But if you look at the empty haulage of Europe versus India, it is no comparison at all. I can tell you it is much less costly to move a parcel from St. Petersburg to Alunor, which I was doing over there, versus India, the same distance. Europe is more efficient for your information.
Perfect. So taking a clue from what you said, there are two fragments which I will pick up, and I'll ask my next question to both of you, is what, according to you, in heavy engineering in particularly, is a scenario of reverse logistics? It is not as easy, as simply, as frequent as probably some other sub-silos of logistics. And how do you mitigate risks of known and unknown?
Yeah, I think really good question. I will tell you an example that how the reverse logistics, or I can say how the things are utilized. Again, coming back to my own company's example, that the transformer were in Germany and it was supplied worldwide. So there are transformer were supplied in Middle East also. There is something, when something goes wrong, you can repair it on site for such items. But there is some repairing, you will not believe, for 200-ton heavy also cannot be repaired at site and it needs to be sent to factory. Then the reverse logistics may not happen in same way back to that factory.
Sure.
Then where is the reverse logistics opportunity? I get it from Middle East very fast to India, repair it and give it back to the Middle East. So the rules for reverse logistics are different in heavy.
Sure.
It will go to some place which is much easier to commute and have capability of repairing.
Right. So is it, sorry to interrupt for a second only, is it therefore logically making more sense and economical to move the capability to a point that you prefer rather than taking your goods to a point where you have the capability?
It will depend on case to case, really speaking, and type of heavy engineering you have. As I said, that something you can definitely repair on site or you can take equipment. Take another case of Bangladesh. You supply something to Bangladesh and you need to repair there. If you want to take your equipment to Bangladesh and bring it back, it is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So it will depend on where is your project, which country, what is the best way to do that. And then there is no rule. It will vary and it will continue changing.
Right.
So we find that yes, you do good project in Bangladesh, but you have to do reverse logistics. Nothing moves for sometimes 20 days to 2 months. And you have to use different way. Then you started sending equipments there and trying to repair it. Get back that equipment is another challenge. So do your regulation, do your calculation every time, what is the best, and there could be different combination coming.
Right. So it's quite a creative work, right?
It's
You take
absolutely.
case
It's
to case.
as he said that everything is a new way, and he would use innovation. And so, just to add to 2 minutes point on that, we said that yes, the things are changing in technology. I have a friend who has done a startup. He came up. He was having good experience in all the trace and track systems of various global companies. And he told them that one day he was working. One day he told, your track and trace system are not real. They are not giving any good this thing. As usual, the other multinational challenged them. What he did meantime is that he booked his own parcel through all these companies, putting his own GPS, and give them a chart, nice chart. It says that it is left from delivery from hub. His GPS showing it was after that 30 minutes it was lying in his hub. Then it says that it is yet to arrive in hub, or it has to move that. And then he said, okay, if you do all these savings of 30 minutes, 40 minutes, you will save 20
Aggregate.
million or something like that. So the technology and innovation is doing any side. And it is with heavy also, it's going to happen the same way, because people can save really good money.
I add on some of the what he said.
And you may like to add, both of
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
while you
yeah,
answer
yeah,
this
yeah.
question, you may like to add if there's any specific India-centric kind of a
So
consideration.
what I can
that-
actually tell him is, in terms of innovation, in terms of track and trace, as I was always mentioning that we've been always ahead in innovating. So what we've gone ahead and done is you get real-time data. Real-time means when it actually happens. It has 21 point pairs where we scan the package, and let it be a big one or a small one, So in terms of getting data, and that's a different BU which actually handles it. And it's a third party who monitors, so nobody can dispute the data. You know what I'm saying in the sense? So, when it comes to that innovations, when it comes to providing the real-time data, DHL is at the forefront.
So which
Yeah.
means from end to end,
Yeah, from end-
you
from-
give 21 pulse points at
Yeah,
which,
exactly. Yeah,
okay.
at the
I-
each.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yep. I would like to add that, supply chain management and heavy engineering supply chain,
Yeah, it's
both
different.
are different
Yeah, yeah.
ball games.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Because what happens when you are handling supply chain management, if anything goes wrong, you have the options.
Yeah.
yeah.
You have the options immediately available. For heavy chain engineering transportation, we have to plan everything well in advance. And not only we have to plan, we have to secure a methodology, method statement.
Right.
And all that we need to ensure that everything happens as per the method statement.
Do you also build into your strategy or your execution plan? Do you build plan A, plan B? Do you do that?
See,
Factor of safety.
it is a very relevant question that you asked technology. So I was explaining technology in heavy engineering transportation. What I understand that automation that any of the companies can try in the supply chain management, ordinary consumer supply chain management, automation of technology in heavy engineering transportation is not a possibility because every step is a challenge. When we are working at the ground level, today the circumstances are different, tomorrow it will be different.
It is so much non-standard,
Like
right?
when we are doing the floating loadout operation, when we do the calculations, how much is the depth of the sea level and how it is going to rise, how it's going to fall. These things we just based on the experience and we calculate the average and then we plan and actually do it. But when we are doing that operation, maybe there are the chances that the same scenario is not there. The circumstances has got
So you have to work
changed.
out plan B, plan C.
So
and
we
so
have
on.
to immediately, for that, the person who is handling, the team who is handling the heavy engineering transportation, they have to be
Very
mentally
reflexive,
very strong.
Understand.
And they have to always be very
On the toes,
cautious as
very
to what to do,
reflexive.
how to do. And here, technology plays the role, but limited to the infrastructure and equipment, not to the
Out of curiosity, on that specific example where you said you handled this kind of a challenge
Yes, yes.
while you were on waters, I mean the consignment was on waters. Did you also have to take into account the low tides and high tides and all that?
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Whole years this thing.
Wow.
Yes.
Just to add into that, actually whatever heavy engineering logistics or supply chain, you need engineers who are transport engineers actually.
Right.
And they are the backbone. In India, it's become difficult. You have the bridges which are built into 1900 British time. There is no drawings available. And you are going to carry 200 ton, 300 ton plus on that. What is going to happen? How you will get permission? You don't have design. So you need an engineer, and what he says is method statement is very right. Also, we talked about imported Excels.
Yes.
People say, I have imported Excel. And people say, some people are using imported Excel gold offer for last 35 years. You go and ask gold offer, they say after 5th year, it doesn't, need not be used really. You can use it, they will work, but they don't guarantee anything. So your engineer and his knowledge is very important more than that. And high tide, low tide. So this is what all really happened, that I am not able to move. In our power plant in Gujarat, we have to get all the heavy lifts in early May, because after May, I will not be able to ship it. Or when customer wanted, we airlifted 321 turbine by using Antonov, because customer wanted it. So Antonov carrying, and in Antonov you have to fit in. So really you do really inside engineering, welding, so that nothing will happen, and you get 320-ton turbine airlifted and give it to customer, because the customer need it.
Just to give you one interesting memory, this was long back in 1992, when the world was not even close to what it is today. Information was not flowing as easily. And there was a lot of gap in terms of understanding best practices technology between India and the developed world. And I happened to go on an oil project, well in 92, and I was jaw dropped when I saw that such kind of an aircraft landed actually on the project site, and from the rear side of it a trailer came out, carrying the goods. And that was unbelievable for me. But today that's a practice. So, well.
What Mr. Sant told, I just like to add that, engineering, of course, it's a very integral part of the heavy engineering transportation, because when we are moving the things, maybe that the land can come down, can slide, and we do not have alternate equipments. Why we have, it's a project, because we do not have alternate handling. We have to plan so that nothing should go wrong.
Sure.
The soil can come down. When we are doing the transportation, it is not that we just keep it and test it. We have to give the stability during the transportation that we mathematically calculate.
Perfect. Yeah.
Again, when we are using the plates, of course we know the capability of the plate, but we have to prove it in numbers.
Sure.
This we have to put it into our method statement.
Right.
So it's heavy engineering transportation.
With a lot of factors of
It's
safety.
engineering. It is more engineering than
I think we are running out of
transportation.
time. Yeah.
And that is what the trade should understand.
Sure. I wish we had more time. Any questions? We have still about 5 minutes to go. Yeah. So just in case no questions, we can continue. Yeah. Is there any point which any one of you feels is so relevant, so important that we must add before we leave, after we consume our time, that hasn't got addressed yet?
I just add one more dimension. We have heard a big dimension from two of our co-panelists on the size and scale of handling, which is typical to heavy industry. But when you come to an OEM kind of environment who is doing repetitive productions of a given kind of engineering product for a long period of time, then there are some specific challenges which people are facing and which need to be seen in the design of the value chain itself. Like a typical scenario which we face in engineering industry is, for building a product, the material or incoming is coming from more than 30 countries. And all are having a different kind of a lead times, all are having different kind of a backward manufacturing kind of a sensitivity. So some can be available in 3 weeks lead time, but some other can be available only at 6 months kind of a lead time. So when you are designing this supply chain for that kind of a factory output, you have to plan for some products which are having 6 months lead time and some nearer. And then the point which you took is perceiving the demand. That's also equally important. So how do you forecast your demand 6 or 9 months on a rolling basis or on a futuristic basis, so that you can plan very accurately something of 3 weeks, which may not be that important, but something which is 6 months or more than 6 months kind of lead time. Now, all have to be synchronized. the material which is coming with a 6-month lead time and then sea freight and other kind of aspects and landing to the plant, you can't hold the material which is having only 3 weeks and 4 weeks lead time in your plant sitting in inventory for 4 or 5 months. So the phase in and phase out, because phase in of hundreds of parts and aggregates is going to happen to build a product, and the phase out is one single product. So all the backward planning. Now the VUCA word which has been used in this, that's very much true. The demand planning, although it's a good science and people are doing that,
But it's your contribution to the domain by
Yeah.
giving this new jargon actually.
yeah, and that's very important that by the time you have placed order for something which is coming 6 months, 5 months, 4 month lead time, and your demand in between has changed. How do you react to that?
Sure.
How is the system is bringing the agility to respond to changes?
Fantastic.
What is the kind of a connect you have with your, what I used in the initial value chain analogy, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supplier base, is that you can modulate
2
them
minutes for skill
and try to
set,
make sure
which is to be
that you don't hold unnecessary material at your place, you don't lock your money into unnecessary inventory,
trust
and
me, we
go
have-
forward into very synergetic way.
Two very quick comments I want to make. One is, of course, we have talked about technology, but I think we need to also be more specific in terms of the digitization that is the kind of the benefits that you can accrue from digitization. And I take this very simple example of one of the competitors of DHL globally, and they have this project called Orion, in which all that they do is every year they reduce the kilometer for moving the same amount of goods, they reduce the kilometer, or they reduce the amount of oil that has been consumed, the fuel that has been consumed in the vehicle. And all this is done through digitization initiatives. And the partners are the drivers, because they are the biggest assets. So it is a task given to them, all these 10,000 drivers, to see how they utilize technology and knowledge along with the control centers to see how they keep on reducing the sort of different parameters, different KPIs. The second point I want to make is that we are not going to leave with an impression that things are not happening in India. In fact, I want to leave the impression that phenomenal things are happening in India. And our company itself is an example that where 3 greenfield sites achieved 100% utilization, moved 30 million tons in one single year. This is an incremental jump over what it was. So it has happened to the same lanes. It has happened to the same rates. So where we were moving 1 rake, we are moving 3 rakes. So it is possible to do, and through collaboration, through technology, through building your chain properly, making it more efficient, things are happening in India.
So surely encouraging environment.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. You wanted to talk about skill set.
Yeah, as far as when you talk about heavy this thing, and he also mentioned this skill, the knowledge, experience, this is a very important thing. If you look at the today, every supply chain person is running after e-commerce, or he is looking some of fancy part of supply chain. But heavy engineering supply chain is equally critical and is very important. I will give example that I have been going to various colleges, and I asked the student, and one of the colleges is in near very close to one of the port and all. I said, you are supply chain student, have you seen the port? They say no. I said, your college should organize. If you are not seeing the port, if you are not seeing the warehouse, or you are not seeing anything which is moving heavy, what kind of supply chain you will know? Only e-commerce is not a supply chain, it's a one part.
Yes.
And for heavy industry, the knowledge and really looking at the things, unless you go into port and see the unloading of the heavy material or even the containers, you will have no idea what is the volume and what is this thing.
You haven't seen the jungle if you haven't seen an elephant. You just can't see rabbits running and say that I know wildlife.
Yeah.
One more point to add, that in heavy engine transportation, when the actual activity is taking place, it is a compliance procedure. The method has been well set. So all that the operations has to do is the compliance procedure.
Perfect.
If a trailer with a registration number has been mentioned, same has to be
there.
present. Why? Because it has been tested, certifications has been made. If there is any change, then the operation has to stop prior approval. Certification has to be approved and taken, then the things move on. I just take some time, in the morning session, Captain Thapa raised.
We're done with the
just
time.
1 minute or 2 minutes. Captain Thapa raised some very, interesting things about shipping and talked of the pitfalls of shipping. So I take at least one example how we are, developing, how we are progressing in shipping, because we try to become as big as South Korea. We want to excel. What happens? Just a very small example in a limited time. If a shipbuilding is making a ship, prior to it is delivered to the buyer or it is going onto the water for commercial use, it has to undergo sea trial. For sea trial, actually, the ship has to be taken for testing inside the deep sea. While we have the competing nations like China, we have South Korea, we have Japan, there is no law there where a shipbuilding is taking place under certain classification class. It has to go to the government or the authority or to take the permission that I need to take my ship for the sea trial. In India, we have. What are the requirement? The requirement is that you have to submit the application, some nominal fee, but you have to submit with the fee a certificate from the class under which it is being manufactured. It is fit to sell.
Okay.
Now, fit to sell, this certification, we know, most of the time, if it is the Indian class, they are happily ready to comply the law of the land and issue the certification. Most of the classification societies overseas,
Right. Our time is
they
up.
have just 1 minute. I'm taking just pitfalls. They have the procedure where once it is sea trial is completed, all the certifications are downloaded at one time. They do not allow any statement in between, any fitment certificate or anything in between. So in India, it becomes a big problem. If it is a foreign classification society, then which will come first, fitment certificate or the certificate? So egg first or chicken first. This matter, in 2009, while we represented one of the shipyards, and this matter was taken up with the Chief Nautical Advisor of Government of India. And he made a call to the foreign class that you either comply the law of the land or we will issue advisory to the shipyards that you be very particular while appointing your classification society, otherwise you may be in problem, and for one shot we may giving some solution to this particular case. The answer of the classification society, the country head was, why instead of focusing on us and pushing us to do this, that, and comply the law of the land, why do not you simplify your law of the land and when you think of competing with Korea, you think of competing with China, you think of competing with the law also.
Right. So probably that will happen after the railways, after the road ministry. It's a
Yes,
time for
yes.
change to be showing up
Yes.
there. So I think all of us should be optimistic that it will happen. Good things are happening. All of us are upbeat about it. And I think with that good note, we can close. We are already a little overshot with time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I request Mr. Rajesh Khubchandani to kindly come forward and present mementos to our speakers here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for that interesting panel discussion.
Thanks a lot.
Well done.